Yo, D1, what's good, bro? What's all that noise in here? You need to put a damn belt on. Motherfucker, you know you don't wear no size 36.
Raging like forever, so you search for a beach vacation. Sunny beaches, sandy beaches, big...
Well, you know, when you talk about even the Jesus thing, you know, when in American society, Western society, you see the depiction of Jesus
Done, homie.
as a white man,
That shit
and
is
as
done.
someone who's been to Jerusalem,
And
been to Egypt,
and Ethiopia and South Africa.
there are no white people in that region. You know, just based on the climate alone, it's not designed for fair skin and straight hair and so forth. So there was no way that Jesus could have been a white man. It's just not possible because there were just no white people in that area.
And
But yet, when you look at the popular depiction of Jesus, it's a white guy. Long, straight hair, even though it says hair of wool in the Bible and so
right.
forth.
You're gonna have black
I really
people
wear
say
damn a 31, 32 in the waist.
But everybody else is gonna
Motherfucker
have
buying 35,
the
36
and
inch.
after their image and likeness.
Fucking
Except
pants
for
being
us.
all baggy and
And
saggy.
then the worst part is, after we adopt the new color, is the narrative accurate? And do we even care to peruse through the narrative? You feel me?
We can't
Like,
throw all the
I go to
old
Matthew
clothes
chapter
away.
1, verse
I had these
23,
pants
and I see the
forever.
word virgin there. And they talking about
Before I grew into my big boy pants.
And then I see the word
And weigh the
virgin
size
there,
that
and I go into
actually
the
supposed to
Greek
fit me.
concordance, and I look up the word virgin. And then I see in the Greek that the word that they use for virgin just means an unmarried woman. Then the virgin Mary isn't necessarily represents a immaculate conception.
Yeah.
It means a woman who was not married, who had this child. But you know, I will get cursed at, and I'll be disrespected. But I will also say, it's not me. In any one of the Bibles you choose to read, if you get one that has a corresponding concordance, you can look up the concordance number, and you can see what the words actually translate to be. And thus, no matter what, if they say, not in my Bible, that's okay. But in everyone's concordance, it's going to have the same definitions. So doesn't matter if your Bible or my Bible's different. Let's look up the concordance number from which these English words derive so we can come to our own definitive conclusion as to what this means and represents. And then when we look up the word, the virgin just simply means the unmarried woman. What are we going to do with that? Are we going to accept it now? That there was no immaculate conception as far as that doctrine is concerned? And then we got to ask, so then where did we get the idea from in the first place? African archetypes of conception. Now we're going to have to go back to Egypt. Now we're going to have to go back to even some of the Sumerian doctrine. We have to go back because this is where these people's information was grafted out of. And then they haven't been given credit for what they gave the world. You feel what I'm saying? And the people that took it didn't stay long enough to understand it. So we wind up giving birth to a bunch of misconceptions and they being perpetuated through different religious sects and denominations. So the concept is all about intuitive intelligence and objective intelligence. And this was expounded upon through R. Swallowed Delubis' book, Symbol or Symbolic. And R. Swallowed Delubis breaks down in the Papyrus of Ani, where he shows you the Ikea lions, one on the left and one on the right, and it says, belongs to me is yesterday. Yes, to me belongs yesterday, and tomorrow I know. And that is the doctrine of simultaneity, or simultaneity. And it looks like simultaneous. And what you see is they're breaking down the principle of the moment. And in order to establish the moment, the paradox is not to deal with it immediately, but to deal with the aspect of yesterday and tomorrow. How would you know tomorrow through the reflection from yesterday? So when we understand that, we only doing this to arrive at how do we assimilate or process that which we can't see or know, but still bear witness to it that is real. Well, in our ancient African mystery systems, we were able to address this already. Like, for instance, the way they depicted was mistranslated as God, which we identified as nature, which were principles of the same consciousness. So all of this is one consciousness. Whether you see in birds, bees, fish, or what have you, it's all one consciousness. And each entity is endowed with a specific faculty that we can observe so we can rationalize that compartment of consciousness from which we all derive. So we look at the flag. The flag was used to represent nature, or that supreme being aspect, which people mistranslate as God. Well, why the flag? Well, when the wind blows and it hits the flag, guess what happens? It moves. And thus we realize that which we can't see is having an impact on the physical world. When the flag moves, we know something we can't see is having an impact on the physical world. So that's how we described nature. That which has an impact on the physical world that may not be seen, but is felt. So now we look at the circle as a form of objective intelligence, right? Or intuitive intelligence. We can't really know for sure that the circle exists if we were to use it based on arithmetic. Why? Because it's composed of an irrational number. 3.14159 run on pi. So we have to use the symbol pi to denote what? It's synthesis. The purpose of a symbol is to establish synthesis. Synthesis is a collection of ideas that helps us understand the system at work and or the theory that it is beholden to. So we look at the square and we can evaluate the square. But we look at the circle and we have to feel a way about it. And what I mean by that is it is a rational numbers that determines the area of the circle. But that's intuitive intelligence. But objectively, we can take the apex of a triangle and draw a circle around the points of the three apex or vertices of the triangle, and then we'll get a circle. Or we can go from
Dane Calloway. Yeah, the slave story was told in reverse. That's his thing, right? That the slave trade is told backwards, kind of. Some people think that everybody should be, all Africans should be really, really dark skinned, and if your skin is kind of reddish like mine, that it comes from generations of the Europeans mixing with us throughout the years of slavery, and then you started to get a fair-skinned Negroid. But then Calloway says that when you read the first conquistadors that came over here, in their diaries and everything, they talked about the copper-colored indigenous people of this land. And some of us do have more of a copper-colored skin. And he says it's not through mixing, that's just the color we're supposed to be. And even copper and even darker, still some as dark as the Africans. And he says that most of the first people that were enslaved on the land that was known as Turtle Island were indigenous natives and not slaves from Africa. And they kind of like told the whole story in reverse, saying that, you know, all the major slave trades were coming from West Africa, when in fact they were just capturing a lot of the indigenous natives and enslaving them. And the because they say most of the slave trade went down to the Jamaica and the Caribbeans and shit like that. But even that one book I have about the Scottish Rite, one of the high masons in the guild was talking about how a French family had plantations and had sugar plantations in Jamaica, and that's where they were taking their slaves to. But the slaves started to outnumber the masses and started to riot and revolt, to the point where they ran some of the major colonizing plantation owners out of Jamaica, ran their ass off the island. But oh, thanks, bro. Your name is funny.
Center point of the circle, draw out the radius, half the diameter, and draw a circle around it. Then we could say, you know what, that also equals a circle. Then we could also understand a line is 180 degrees, and we draw an arc, that'd be 360. And then we could reciprocate the same in that. Draw an arc, that'd be 180, and we could reciprocate the same, and that'd be 360. But if we were to try to use arithmetic, we would have the coefficient represented by pi, and we would have to say it's an irrational number that we cannot complete. It's not a whole integer. An irrational number is the best we can do to create a circle, which means the circle's in speculation unless we use objective intelligence. And all we realize is this is the working model for the spirit realm. The circle represents spirituality, and we can bear witness to the circle as reflective of that which is transpiring spiritually because of its counterpart, the square. Why are they counterparts? They're fraternal twins. The circle is equal to 360 degrees and the square is equal to 360 degrees. Yet they don't look alike. So one must exist on one plane where the rules are different, and the other one exists on another plane where the rules are different. Objective and intuitive intelligence. This is the way the ancestors thought. So they put everything based on their apperception, based on their cognizance of what was going on in their environment. They looked at the trees, they looked at the birds, and they said this to themselves. Birds make up what? 10% of the oxygen that we breathe. They're contributing to the human paradigm. Just think about this. This is why it's all one mind. It's not different. All animals on life is part of man consciousness. It's not one consciousness. It's one consciousness. It's not broken up into the different divisions and sets that we see. So we look at bees, and when they can't find their way back to the hive, that's called colony collapse disorder, right? And our cell phones is doing it, and the wireless systems is throwing off their navigations. And what we're doing is compromising the integrity of our ability to accommodate for 10% of that which we breathe in. So that's bees. We look at ants. Ants burrow into the ground, but it makes the ground porous enough so there can be air there so plants can grow. That's amazing. We look at a jellyfish that has no brain but it's alive. But it consumes the microorganisms that had the jellyfish not existed in the sea. Anything that we eat from out the sea, whether it's fish or seaweed, whatever the case may be, we would die because of the jellyfish is not in the sea, consuming the dangerous, detrimental microorganisms that would kill us. The jellyfish are not there, we would die. So what's the model? What is the working model? Everything seems to be working in conformity to the better advantage of man to progress consciously. You see what I'm saying? It can't be by accident. You name anything on planet Earth, and I'm going to show you how it's connected to man. So man conspired these different events to advance himself, being part of a consciousness that bear witness to itself, which caused matter and antimatter to collide. And this is what I'm getting from my ancient Kemetic sciences. And I'm like, you know what? It's deep. It gives me chills. So I don't make, even though there's diversity, I don't set these things apart. I realize it's just one thing. So I don't undermine animals and I don't undermine the plants, because I know that they're all working in conformity to advance us. And if we were to destroy ourselves through nuclear warfare, there's bacteria that have spores, right? So what they call them. And these spores create a shell that's encapsulated around the bacteria that can withstand any type of heat or any type of cold known to us. And all it does is makes two forms of DNA.
And that's how you know the Bible is fucked up. Yin and yang. Everything has a polar opposite. There's two sides to everything. Everything has a positive and negative pole to it. But with your Abrahamic Christian text, you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Like, there is no feminine energy in there, nowhere. Like, you messed up the whole balance by taking the female out of the equation. You gotta have yin and yang, soft and hard, dark and light. You know what I'm saying? Without it, it's a complete imbalance. You know what I'm saying? And that's the one thing that I learned, or that I already got down question about the Christian religion is like, why y'all hate women so much? I love women. You know what I'm saying? If God made something better than a woman, he would have kept it for his damn self. Ain't nothing better than a woman. Even in the Bible, the angels came from heaven to fuck some women, bro, some human women. They wanted that thing. They made giants and everything. You know what I'm saying? But the Bible just like shits on a woman. It's crazy. Duality is like the structure of our fucking reality. Everything has two sides
That exists outside of it and one that stays inside of it. And when the setting is right, when there's the right amount of ammonia, methane, ultraviolet rays, when the setting is right, the prototype for the first cell can be created all over again, because it'll open up and it'll distribute the DNA all over again. Now, who created that? Now, we can call it God. I don't mind. I'm just saying, when it comes to the original African archetype of conception,
it's not a muscle.
I want to use the words and the terms that they use, because we genetically have an affinity with the tones. So when we speak it in the tones that our ancestors demonstrated when they spoke, perhaps it may wake something up in us that's dormant to reestablish these same ideals. So I choose to say nature. But ultimately, whether we call it God or not, it's okay, because that could be your objective focus, because man tends to want to make things have eyes, nose, and lips just like itself. So we'll find that the angels are in heaven with white robes, and God has a throne, so he must have buttocks because he sits on it. And then if there's white robes, then I have to wonder if this...
Yo, what's the other dude name who was in here talking about we gonna die and go to hell if we don't repent, and the white man is the devil? Yo, what his name was? Something God, yo. Anyway, that dude was going in on me about the Bible. Swear to God, yo. He was going ham. Well, I grew up in church, bro. And I talk about this all the time in here. This is like religion and politics, mostly. Religion, politics, science, and art, social issue. We talk about everything, but I talk about religion a lot. Just because I grew up in the church, and my whole family is still uber religious, and they're Southern Baptists, and they shout and get the Holy Ghost and faint and speak in tongues and all that stuff, man. And it's like, what the fuck is going on here? I felt that way since I was a kid. I've never felt it, bro. No matter how many times I went to church and Bible study and choir practice, and I never felt nothing. I mean, I was a happy kid, don't get me wrong. I loved life. I loved to live. But there's something about that religion. That shit it never, like, snatched me. Well, one of my nephews a preacher now. My sister, she still go to church every Sunday. All my family still go to church. But I stopped going, like, early in my teenage years. Like, I ain't gonna lie, yo. When I dropped out of high school, that's when my grandma said I ain't gotta go to church no more. So she's like, I dropped out of school. She's like, you go get a job and pay bills. I'm like, if I gotta work, do I gotta go to church? She said no. I was like, good, finally. I had to drop out of school and get a job just not to go to church. That was like, I dropped out of school when I was like 17, something like that, and never been to church since. I was hardly going before then. She'll make me go like every once in a while, but I was like, screw that. I got up and walked out. Any thoughts? I missed that last comment. Let me scroll back. But God as a scientist? That's roughly how I see it. My man D1, he put me on the Kabbalion. I think that's probably the closest thing that I can agree with to understanding, explaining, and accepting what we would consider God to be. I've listened to it like a couple times. It's an audio book you can listen to, and it's like a couple times. It's an audio. It just makes sense. Oh, Michael Jackson died. Brainwashed guy. What? Oh, Michael Jackson died 10 years ago. My thoughts on Michael Jackson's death? Tragic death. he gave that one speech a little while before he died about how Sony tried to play him, but he outsmarted Sony. He owned all the rights to all the Beatles music. He owned the rights to like half of the artists on Sony. And I think he was going to try to bust a move to do his own record label, own distribution and everything. And I don't know, there's a lot of stuff surrounding his death, even with Prince too. You know what I'm saying? These dudes got the most money, the best health care, all this shit, and they be going through these little health snafus that kill their ass. Oh yeah, everybody got to go someday. Ain't no reason to fear it. You know what I'm saying? Everybody gonna take that long nap. Dirt nap. But that's the thing, like what's on the other side of consciousness? Somebody says, so what was it like before you was born? Say what? Just tell me. Tell me exactly. What was it like before you were born? Okay then, that's how it's going to be when you're dead. It's going to be just like before you were born. Before you were conceived, rather. Why did I let my palette dry so much? Let's see something. Exactly.
I believe the Big Bang created space and time, but energy and mass cannot be created or destroyed. So I was wondering, how could energy mass exist without space and time?
You need to call a physicist show, first of all. Second of all, the basic laws of, conservation of energy and everything may not necessarily have applied then. But third, that the origin of the universe doesn't necessarily have to violate those things.
Yeah, because that's the question that always comes to mind when I believe that God created the Big Bang.
The total energy of the universe is zero. Which means it does not. There's no violation of the conservation of energy in the appearance of the universe.
So what makes you think that God did the Big Bang?
Well, to me, it's just illogical that energy mass could be without space and time. I understand that.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. What was that?
But how can energy mass? It seems dependent on space and time.
There's a limit to the depth of the science you're going to get out of us, but you really should be talking to physicists.
It seems more illogical than scientific.
Okay, it can seem that way to us laypersons, but are you aware that the great majority of physicists are not Christians, are not theists, I should say?
I believe there's about 75% that aren't theists.
Okay, so if it's so obvious, if this thing that seems obvious to you is so obvious, how come it's not obvious for those guys? The guys who actually do the work.
The more important question, why are 25% theists? That's the more important question.
It's easy to compartmentalize, but these other guys, well, there are more unbelievers amongst physicists than there are in the general public.
Okay, so now you have to explain that. Outside of this dimension? Okay, so what is outside of this dimension? Another dimension. And I forgot the theory that it's called, but they believe that there is some kind of like ultra verse that makes other universes, and like it's like a big ball, and then like little universes just pop out of it sometimes. And then you have the bounce theory, where there's a bunch of universes and we're always bouncing back and forth, imploding and exploding and Big Bang, and then a trillion years later it collapses and another Big Bang, and it just goes on for eternity. Whatever that is, then you got to explain eternity. Everything comes back to what our concept of time is, and that's the hardest thing for us not to do, is to think perceptually without using time as a framework or a reference point. Because what was before the Big Bang? Obviously, I don't know. And then you want to say God. Okay, so where did God come from? And you say God is eternal, and he always was, and God doesn't have a beginning. And then if you conceptualize an entity that doesn't have a beginning, then why can't you conceptualize cosmos that doesn't have a beginning? It just is, and that's how it is, and we're in it. What is the greatest number? +1.
Yeah,
That's not why there are still some is not the question. Why so many of them are not believers? That's the question.
Yeah, out of the people who understand this subject the best, the overwhelming majority of them do not find it more reasonable that a God did it. And I'm still wanting to hear why you think it's more reasonable that a God did it. When what we're talking about is something that we don't understand and cannot even investigate. So therefore, there can't be evidence to support your position. And I wanted to know why you had it.
Well, I just happen to be a theist because I'm a born-again Christian, and I had an first-hand experience with God.
So you have a preconception or a presupposition that God exists. So you're trying to fit him into the science.
Well, I'm not trying to fit him in. I'm just saying it's just equally credible than what physicists come out with, which to me seems illogical.
Well, considering that you don't seem to understand it, I don't know how you can claim it's illogical. But my point was, you're not following the evidence, you're leading the evidence. You were already a believer in the Christian God, and now you've been convinced by evidence that the Big Bang is the best scientific model of the origins of the universe, and then you're trying to plug your God into the gaps into the gap areas where we don't have complete answers yet. And
well, to me, the gaps are facts.
What?
To me, the gaps are facts. This is the God of the facts because God fulfills all the necessarily criteria that would account for a first cause.
Well, no, he wouldn't, because to account for a thing, you can't just make up some other thing. You have to show that the thing that you're using to account for the open questions actually exists. I mean, you can make up things to account for all kinds of stuff. But if you can't show that the thing that you made up actually exists, then you haven't really accounted for it. You've just made things up.
Well, God would subsist, not necessarily exist. Exist means what exists in space and time. God would be transcendent, so God would subsist. God would be a foundation.
What evidence do you have that anything like that could possibly exist?
Well, for one thing, say science. Science relies on cause and effect. It has that assumption. Otherwise, we can experiment because when we experiment.
Okay, so what's the experiment you did? What's the experiment you did that demonstrated that your God exists?
Well, God fulfills all the necessary criteria.
That's not an experiment. That's not an experiment. I could say, I could make up some creature that spews out these aluminum ACA mugs, right, as part of its biological process, and I have now accounted for that mug. But if I can't show that the creature really exists, I'm just flapping my gums, and that's what you're doing when you try to account for things about the origin of the universe. Which, by the way, the physicists who understand those things, for the most part, reject your God and don't agree with you, right? So we got to keep reminding you of that. But making up something and calling it your God and saying that is the thing that explains it doesn't really explain anything until you've shown that your God actually exists.
Well,
can you?
Well, to claim that something exists, you would need to have criteria established that you either meet up with your claim or do not meet up with the claim. And as far as God,
is there a such thing as a largest number? I'm not really sure I've been asked that question. the greatest number or the largest number. I couldn't tell you. I'm about to learn something right now. So what's the largest number? Damn, my throat itching from that sneeze. Ooh.
Be concerned. God would be, number one, a reasonable entity.
Okay, so I'm making up a criteria. I'm making up a criteria for a thing that meets my that fits my claim, and it's that creature that spews these aluminum mugs. See what you're doing? That is not how it's done. You can't just say because I have an idea that fits the available information, that therefore my idea is automatically right. That's not how science works. What?
The very fact that we have ideas demonstrates the highest form of what exists, and that would be our reason.
Dude,
The fact that we have ideas shows that we have thinking machines in our body.
yeah, would you mind please sticking on one subject and
Where's
not
my
like the
paper
moment
towel?
we start pressing you on one of your claims, you jump to another one? You've already done that with, the origin of the universe. Now you're doing it with this.
How have I been doing that?
Yeah.
Well, I apologize.
Look, I've
me go grab a roll
shown
of paper
you
towel, guys.
that just making is just like saying this God idea you have, that answers the open questions in science, which it doesn't, by the way, because if it did, then most physicists would agree with it, and they don't, right? But we've shown you that is not how it works. That's not how you prove a thing exists. Because I can make up any number of things that answer any number of open questions. What you need to do is show that the thing you're proposing actually exists. Can you or can't you?
God would substance, so it would be a foundation for existence.
No. So
you would
is that
demonstrate
no or a yes?
Well, you would demonstrate that everything known would have a foundation.
So suppose everything does have a foundation. How have you demonstrated that foundation is your God?
Well, what would you consider demonstration? Would a logical
That's
argument
not
be
my
a form
problem.
of
I'm
demonstration?
not the one proposing your God, dude. You are. This is basic burden of proof. You say you think this thing exists. Great. It is your job now to demonstrate that it exists. Can you or can't you?
Well, I would base my demonstration on a logical argument.
Okay, okay, logic is a fine thing, and it works when when you feed in facts. Okay? The problem is you're just doing your
It's the Hyundai 4th of July sales event. Now get a Tucson for just $169 a month, or get 0%.
Yeah, I had a friend. We were on the phone. I guess we were just discussing theology. I believe in God, and I'm respectful in regards to people's beliefs and stuff. And he was telling me his beliefs. So we just had a conversation. I got a little heated, but it was still a respectful conversation. At the end of the day, we were talking on.
You've been listening to a little bit too much of Elon Musk. But if you believe in a God and a heaven and hell, then you are living in a simulation. Right? Heaven and earth are on two different realms. Can you go to heaven right now? Can you walk there? Can you physically take your physical body to heaven? No. Your spirit or your soul goes there because it's transcendent and it's able to reach the real world where God is at. See, God is real, right? God is real, and he's in heaven in his kingdom. That's a whole different world from where we're at. So God is in the real world, and when you're finished living in his simulation, then you can come up there where he is at. Because he's the creator, he programmed all of this, and he created you, and he put you in his simulation. And he's testing you. It's like a video game. Life is a bitch, ain't it? You're gonna win, or you're gonna lose. Oh, you won? Alright, you can come out the simulation and come to the real world with me. Think about it. The Bible even tells you this world is just temporary. There's another life, the real life that everyone's waiting to get to. And you could get there faster if you kill yourself, but killing yourself is a sin. So you can't cheat. Can't cheat your way to the end and get there quicker than you supposed to. But then if you die from cancer as a baby, that means you got lucky or something, I guess, and you get to go to heaven early without ever living through all this bullshit. I don't know. I don't know how that works. God works in delirious ways. I need to find the picture. There you go, talk about food again. What don't make sense? Man, don't hardly nothing make sense when you think about it. Everything is screwy. That's why we gotta sit here and talk about this stuff, so we can kind of see what makes sense, because we're not going to agree on everything. And the small things that we agree about, we gonna still think about it separately from our own subjective point of views. So yeah, shit don't make sense. What? Y'all don't know about that black screen. Where is the picture for this painting? Oh my word. I never. This is a travesty. I have misplaced my reference photo.
But shake his hand, you know, at the end of the day.
Yeah, that happens here all the time. So
okay, so he told me about the show. He actually gave me the number, like I guess like a week ago, conversation, and he was like, just like talk in, just tune in and talk to them, just talk to them and figure out, you know, what they're talking about and stuff. So.
But what do you believe and why?
So, well, before I answered that, I was trying to figure out, you know, like, I've never even heard of this, I guess. Is this like the YouTube thing or like the radio or what's going on?
We have been on the live cable access show for many years, and over time we have just diverged from that and just are an internet-only show. We've been going on for 20 years now.
Really? That's good. That's successful.
Yeah, that actually reminds me. They're going to be putting together like a special video package thing for the 20th anniversary, which is going to air immediately following the live show on the 22nd.
Really? Well, congratulations. But yes, I was just saying, you know, like I believe in God. He told me like you used to be a Christian and everything.
God told you that, or your friend?
Huh? No. I said my friend.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was not clear because you said I believe in God, and he told me that you used to be a Christian, and I was like, that would be awesome.
Well, I probably should have made that clear. But yeah, he was telling me like you used to be a Christian. I mean, I've listened to like your conversation. You sound very intelligent, so I don't think you're not intelligent.
Well, thanks.
But yeah, that's all I was gonna say. I was telling you, like I believe in God, and I want to,
But why?
What are your beliefs? Like, what's your belief system?
Well, I believe in most of the same things that anybody else would believe. I just don't believe in that a God exists. I don't believe in anything supernatural. I don't believe in afterlife. I don't know really how to answer that because it's not like there's a package. Whatever's going on in the background, we got to turn that off, or I'm going to have to hang up. Because.
Give me 1 second, please. Let me turn it on.
Okay, and on the 22nd, they will play best of clips, as it says down there at the bottom. See, I know everything that's going on as soon as it pops up on that little...
God is talking to us.
By the way, that reminds me, Mark, I have an idea for a t-shirt that we're going to have to do after we're done with this. But yeah, Calvin, you there?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, so you asked kind of... I understand the confusion because if you're a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim or whatever, you just use that label as kind of like a package for all of your beliefs. But the thing is, there's 1,000 different denominations of Christianity, so saying you're a Christian really doesn't tell me all that much about your beliefs. It just tells me that you identify as a Christian. I'm an atheist. I accept reasonable findings of science. I have views on morality that are based on well-being and freedom and equality and what benefits us. But I couldn't put together a belief system in a package in 30 seconds.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I slipped up as a civil. Sorry, I didn't mean to say Christianity. I meant to say I'm a follower of Christ. I hate saying like denominations and like religions and stuff.
Yeah, but that doesn't do anything else either. Saying you're a follower of Christ that's pretty much just as useful as saying you're a Christian.
If you want to say like that, that's what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, I'm trying my best to be like Christ, and I believe God died for our sins. Like, if you used to be a Christian, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, that's the thing. This is the shorthand. I suspect that I have a good idea of what you're talking about, but I don't know what you believe specifically or why, because it's going to be different for almost every person who identifies as a Christian.
Okay, so I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I believe that the Bible is inspired.
The whole Bible, like all 66 books.
We're under the New Testament, but yes, the whole Bible.
Well, okay, so we're under the New Testament, but okay. So
I know about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you know about what?
No. Well, I'm saying we're under the New Testament now, but I still believe that the Old Testament is inspired by God too.
So when God said that it was okay to own slaves, that was a good thing?
When God said what?
That it's okay to have slaves? That was a good thing?
He talked about how to be toward your slaves. He said be respectful, and he was talking about being respectful to your slaves and all that stuff. But he never said slavery was bad.
Yeah, you're right. He never said slavery was bad. What it says in Exodus is it tells you who you can buy as slaves and that you can beat them as long as they don't die within a couple days and that they were your property that you could pass on to your children. Are those good things?
Well, I'm not sure if you said that in the
Exodus 21. Exodus 21. Go read it.
Well, I'm not talking about that verse. I'm talking about he says be respectful towards them, like slavery towards like the African Americans or like anybody who's
the Bible says you can own people as property, pass them on to your children, and you can beat them as long as they don't die within 2 days. Is that a good thing?
Like I said, it did say that slavery was bad.
Why is it that you can't answer the simple question? Is it a good thing to tell people that they can own people as property, pass that property on to their children, buy slaves from the people around them, and beat them as long as they don't die within a couple days? Is that a good thing?
You know, was it what? Okay, I'm just trying to answer the question. Do I think that's a good thing? You know, I can't really just say like that's like obviously, you know, it isn't. I can't just say that's the best thing in the world or anything like that.
Oh my gosh! Listen to yourself. I can't say that that's not like the best thing in the world. I can say that it's an abomination that no moral being could have ever said. I can say that loud and proud in every freaking week on the show. Why is it that you can't say that?
Well, I'm not going to call it an abomination like you did. But
well,
like
why?
I'm not gonna...
You don't think that owning people is an abomination?
Yeah, I think it's horrible.
No.
Okay. And I think this is a prime example of how religions are foster evil. You know,
this is all irrelevant as to whether or not there's a God. But if you're arguing that the Bible is the inspired word of God, and you're reluctant to point out that it contains things that are immoral and sanctions them.
What else would you say is immoral about it?
Well, first of all, I don't think I would need anything else. You only need the one. But also, I would say that instructions to kill homosexuals is immoral. I would say the subjugation of women is immoral. I would say that having women have an inferior position to men is immoral. I would say that selling your daughter into slavery is immoral. I would say that God saying, "I'll let you win this war if you sacrifice the first thing that comes out of your house when you get home," is immoral. I would say that substitutional atonement is immoral. I would say that the very concept of sin is immoral. The idea that I could somehow offend a God, or that something that I could think or do which has no impact on any other person in reality is immoral. I would say that holding someone responsible for the sins of their father under the 4th or the 10th generation is immoral. How many more do you need before you recognize that you're making excuses for a book that advocates for immoral positions?
And you say that in regards to the fact that that's your opinion, which I respect. You know, that's your opinion.
Do you disagree? Do you think those things are morally good?
I don't agree with any of the stuff you said, but the one...
Wait a minute. When you say you don't agree with it, are you agreeing with me that it's immoral?
I'm disagreeing with your approach to it.
So you're saying those things are morally good?
Well, if I would have to go one by one and talk about each...
Is it morally good to hold women in an inferior status to men?
Who says that it's an inferior
Your
status?
Bible. Christ is the head of the church, is the same as the husband of the head of the household. Women did not have the same rights that men have. Paul does not allow a woman to permit a woman to teach in church.
You're right. He doesn't.
Yeah. Is that good? Is that good?
I do think the man should be the head of the household. I do think.
Then you are an immoral, unequal, sexist buffoon. You have given up equality in deference to your book. No wonder it's so difficult for you to say that slavery is immoral. It's so difficult for you to say that all the other things I listed are immoral.
Question without difficulty.
Yes, you managed to get the exactly wrong answer without difficulty. Congratulations. You are willing to sacrifice your humanity in order to appeal to a book that you know to be immoral. You just won't acknowledge it.
No, I just want to acknowledge your approach to it.
I'm telling you what the book says. Are you saying I'm wrong about what the book says?
I'm saying you're wrong in regards to things that you said about the book.
Does Exodus 21 allow people to own slaves as property and to beat them as long as they don't die within a couple days. Is that what Exodus 21 says?
Exodus 21 says it like that, but you're not saying it in the right way.
Would you like me to read it to you so that you can deny it after I've read it?
I know the verse.
No, you don't. You either don't know the verse or you are lying about something else. Because I virtually quoted it verbatim.
I'm saying exactly, even it says exactly that, just like you said, that one verse you were talking about. What'd you say? You were talking about the homo. Yeah, you were talking about how homo, like sexuality and stuff. And
yeah, do you think homosexuals should be put to death? That they're deserving of death?
Well, Shelly, in my opinion, I don't think they're deserving of death, but I don't think it's right. So is that a?
So you're saying you don't think they deserve death?
I'm saying in my opinion. I didn't say his opinion. His opinion is different.
Whose opinion?
It's different.
Whose opinion?
If God says it's an abomination, right?
Right?
But God's wrong. It's that simple.
So who's wrong? You or God?
Well, obviously me, because mine comes.
You're wrong.
Not wanting to harm anyone.
So God says it's an abomination, they're deserving of death. You disagree with him, and you are saying that you're wrong?
I agree with it. That's an abomination, but in my opinion, I wouldn't kill them. But you know what God says.
The issue wasn't whether or not you killed him. It was the issue of whether or not they're deserving of death. Who's wrong? You or God? And if you're wrong, why aren't you changing your mind to be right with God? Didn't you say that you were a follower of Christ and were doing your best to do what God wants? How could you possibly sit here and suggest that God's right, but you're going to continue in your wrongness when your wrongness is actually better?
How would I continue in my wrongness because I haven't put anyone to death for it? So
I'm talking about whether you think they deserve to be put to death.
I mean, like I said, it definitely is an abomination. That's not right.
Well, why is it an abomination? What's it an abomination towards or from? What is it about two people? What is it about two people having sex that is an abomination?
Well, simply from the thing that you just don't seem to get, that at the end of the day, religion or not, it's someone's opinion solely. You can believe.
I don't care about opinions. You might as well, if all we're going to do is talk about opinions. I'm talking about you're claiming that the Bible is the inspired word of God, and I'm pointing out things that are objectionable, and you are not acknowledging it.
No, you're not acknowledging my right to the opinion, and you're not acknowledging.
I am absolutely acknowledging your right to have an opinion. I can also point out that your opinion is nonsense, that it is immoral. You could call in and say, it's my opinion that it's okay to beat and rape people, but your opinion would be still immoral still, wouldn't it?
And you can say that your opinion is that nothing comes from nothing, that nothing comes from intelligent design, and I can say the same thing.
My opinion is you just represented a cartoon straw man of my views because you refuse to honestly defend your own, to the point where you put yourself at odds with God.
Well, I don't mind defending mine. I'm just saying.
You haven't defended a thing. You just blew it all off as opinion. God's got an opinion. You've got an opinion. I've got an opinion. Woo, look at all the assholes. You're right. I can fucking cuss as all I want. It doesn't make any difference. Why would you bring that up? It's not relevant. Why can't you say that slavery is immoral? Why can't you say that homosexuality is not some kind of an abomination?
You really have, you're not having any manners. When you have a dialogue or a conversation, it's a back and forth. You're on the mic, so you're trying to control the conversation, but you're not being rude.
I think, Calvin, if you go back, we were more than patient with you, including giving you time to turn down the shit that was going on behind you after pointing it out twice. And when I've asked questions, I offered you a chance to respond. You just don't like it because when I pointed out problems with your book, you were faced with two possibilities. Holy crap, if I agree with him, that means I'm saying there's something wrong with the Bible. And I can't do that. So I'd better disagree with him, even if it makes me look like an immoral, inhuman person.
Well, this is the thing. I don't mind answering questions. The only thing I mind is at the end of the day, even if we disagree, about what you believe and what I believe. At the end of the day, we have our own belief system. So even if you don't believe what I believe, I'm still going to respect you, and I'll still be respectful to you. And I only mentioned the cussing because of what happened to Good Grammar. That's why I mentioned that. That's the only reason I even said that.
I respect your right to hold whatever view you want or you hold, but I don't respect your views. I will never respect the views of people who can't come out and simply say that slavery is immoral, who can't come out and say that women and men should be treated equally, who can't come out and say that, hey, if you're gay, it's not an abomination and you don't deserve to be put to death. I'm not going to respect those views, just like I don't respect the KKK, just like I don't respect fascists, just like I don't respect sexists, just like I don't respect rapists. If something is immoral, I'm not going to respect that view, even though you have a right to your opinion. Why are you willing to be immoral instead of acknowledging that your book is immoral?
Well, let me get past your simple because I'm gonna start. But I mean, I'm not. You're saying like I'm being immoral.
You are.
But I mean, like I said, with all due respect, that's your opinion. Whatever whatever you feel.
Correct. It's my opinion.
You told us that slavery is okay.
Yeah.
That's immoral.
I said
it's Don's opinion too, and I bet if I asked for a show of hands on the other side, I'd get a show of hands. But you know what? I don't need to do that because that's a self-selected audience full of godless heathens who came to watch a show. So why don't we just go to the United Nations Charter that denounces slavery? Why don't we go to the bulk of modern civilization that has fought against slavery and claimed that it's an abomination? You've got one thing that's an abomination, which you are not willing to denounce, and another thing that's not an abomination, which you are claiming is an abomination. You're not going to lecture me about morals and then preclude, oh, it's just my opinion. Well, who gives a rat's ass about your opinion?
I mean, you obviously don't. You're asking for it.
Correct.
You're being anal when I give it to you. I'm only saying like this. Okay, do I believe that people should still be sacrificing animals as, you know, repentance for their sins? No, but did it happen? Yes. Are we still under that? No.
Should we have ever done it? Should we have ever done
it? Should people have ever did things they've done in history before? No. But with that same,
has slavery ever been moral?
See, here's the thing. This is where we're going to end, and I'm going to give you the last word, because you are now flagrantly dishonest, because nobody brought up this idea of sacrificing animals. But your position your position is that people shouldn't do that anymore. But at one point in time they did. And my question was, should they have done it then? And your answer was not yes they should have or no they shouldn't. It was, hey, people did stuff back then. Either answer the question that is presented to you or go away. Should they have sacrificed animals back then? Oh, I guess he chose go away. It's 6:02.
That's him.
You haven't seen the sun in like forever, so you search for a beach vacation. Sunny beaches, sandy beach.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Not the best.
Oh, sorry.
I called probably about, I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or last week, but I spoke about hell at the time, and I was I come from an agnostic background. About 6 months ago, I just kind of went nuts and became very afraid of hell, and all I've really done in that time is read apologetics and counter-apologetics and like every spare waking moment I have, and it's very miserable.
Ted, which hell are you afraid of?
Well, namely a Christian or a...
Why would you be more afraid of that than other potential bad afterlives?
Because I think there is slightly more reason to believe in those hells than the other ones that I've been presented with, and because they're the only ones that really say, at least generally speaking, if you don't have faith in this and believe it, then you will burn in hell and forever. So
basically, somebody has made a threat of a particular notion of hell, and I'm assuming you don't have any evidence that this hell is real?
I don't have evidence that hell is real, but
so somebody made a threat of a hell that that scared you more than other threats of hell, despite the fact that there's no evidence that this place is real?
Well, so I'm concerned. I've gone over the apologetic arguments many times, and I think I spoke about this last time, but I'm not really concerned about, like, really any of the arguments that would prove a deistic God, because those don't seem convincing to me, at least as I've gone through them, although I acknowledge the possibility that I could be wrong. Last week, there was in between the last time I called, there was an apologetics group that came to my school. It was like people like Ravi Zacharias or whatever his name is.
Sure, that's his name.
Yeah, it was another guy's name started with a T. I actually spoke to him Friday night, like 20 minutes myself. Thanks, guy. But anyway, and then I went. They presented the argument for the resurrection. And I did a lot of studying with that, and I find a lot of convincing arguments that would both suggest that there is a lot of reason to believe and there isn't a lot of reason to believe. And I mean, it's kind of like driving me nuts because you have...
Sure. Have you watched my debate against Mike Licona on the resurrection?
Mike Licona?
Mike Licona versus me.
Yeah, I did, and I felt I don't. It's just there's a very large amount of evidence, and it's very confusing to me.
Really, because Mike presented no evidence, no empirical evidence. He spent the first half of the debate arguing about Ouija boards and trash cans flying in order to poison the well and make people think that there was a supernatural component to serve as a justification for his only argument that he presented, which is basically the Bible claims that Jesus rose from the dead. What empirical evidence is there that Jesus existed, died, and came back to life?
Well, by the very, and I by the way, I agree that beginning part of the debate and a lot of other, it was very silly on his behalf. But there couldn't exist or not a reasonable expectation of empirical evidence other than historical evidence in that particular case.
I understand.
Do you disagree with that?
So we don't have time machines. However, so if you're going with historical evidence, what you have is a bunch of reports and claims. But on occasion, those historical reports and claims have evidence supporting them. For example, I wasn't around when George Washington was president of the United States, and so I only have books full of claims, and we could just say, well, everything that's historical is just a tenet of faith, except that we have evidence for this, both people writing for and against political cartoons.
Take it easy. Take it easy.
We have a
what's going on here? Calm the fuck down.
String of connected incidents leading from that to now. The issue, as Hume would address it, is you have to ask yourself,
had to get bigger brushes. Working on some large areas. Areola, areola, areola. Y'all don't know about that.
Is it more miraculous that this event happened, as reported, than that someone would be intending to deceive or that someone has become deceived? Now, the idea that George Washington was president, is it more likely that George Washington was actually president and the evidence is largely accurate, or that somewhere between the founding of the United States and now, somebody made a big lie and sold everybody on it? Which one of those is more preposterous? And Hume's advice is to reject the greater miracle. Note that Hume's advice is not accept the lesser miracle. That would be a mistake. But you should reject the greater miracle. And now, is it more miraculous that Jesus lived, died, and came back to life, or is somebody potentially mistaken or misrepresenting the events? Which one is more miraculous?
So, in one sense, it is more likely that it was a legend or a deception.
Okay, all right, stop, Teddy.
No, but
stop,
no,
Teddy,
but you
stop.
can't put a probability on.
Teddy, stop. You say in one sense it's more miraculous that he rose from the dead. In what sense is it not more miraculous that he rose from the dead? What fantasy land that you could tie to reality? Is it less miraculous that somebody rose from the dead than that people misrepresented, misreported, or believed something that wasn't true?
Because you couldn't put a probability on a one-time supernatural event.
Okay, that's not the way this works. Okay. When you're assessing a claim, you compare it to similar claims. How many times has anyone ever been confirmed to be resurrected from the dead after 3 days?
So, but I don't think that's a fair claim, because I don't think any Christians would make the claim that this is something, I mean, other than, the little bit in the book of Matthew, but would make the claim that there is like any other time when anyone would rise from the dead.
It doesn't matter. See, this is the thing. If you would just answer the question rather than talking about what Christians would or wouldn't claim, we could actually talk about this in a way that allows us to determine what is reasonable to believe and what is not reasonable to believe. How many times has it ever been confirmed that someone died and rose from the dead 3 days later, or in this case, a day and a half later, that we're going to call 3 days?
Well, never, obviously.
Never. Okay. So given that we have 0 occurrences of this, how many claims are there that this type of thing has happened?
I don't know.
Several.
A lot? I mean,
not tons, but several. I mean, there are other, well, Jesus supposedly raised Lazarus from the dead. There are a number of died and risen saviors, although I'm not convinced that all of them necessarily fit. But at least one, and it seems to be several.
Okay.
Now, how many times has someone been convinced of something that was false, including miraculous things, when those things didn't actually ever happen?
A great number of times, obviously.
All day, every day, for the entire history of humanity.
Yeah.
So, given that, the burden of proof is on the claim that this actually happened. And so, to meet that burden of proof, you have to provide something more than, here's some people, unnamed people, anonymous people, that we can't interview, that lived 2,000 years ago, who claim that this happened. Well, by and large, when theists make the argument for the resurrections, the evidence that they sort, what's the most common piece of evidence cited by Christians to claim that the resurrection occurred?
The gospel?
No.
Oh, the empty tomb.
The empty tomb. Is there an empty tomb? Was that tomb filled with somebody before it was empty? Do we have any way to investigate that it was empty? Do we have any way to confirm it was empty? Do we have any way to confirm that there was somebody in there? Do we have any way to confirm what happened between the time somebody was in there and it was empty? Is there any way to investigate the empty tomb?
There's not, but wasn't there?
Correct.
It was like that.
Now, if you look at the gospel accounts of what happened on that Easter Sunday, do they agree on what happened?
Not with all the details.
Not with hardly any of them. They don't agree whether the stone was rolled away ahead of time or not. They don't agree on whether or not there was an angel outside the tomb or not. They don't agree on who was there first. They don't agree on who was told first. They don't agree on anything. And so you have to get rid of all that fluff, which is why they go to the empty tomb, because the only thing that they mostly agree on is that the tomb was empty. One of them doesn't actually agree that the tomb was empty. When they enter the tomb, there's a young person in there that may or may not be an angel. So it's not empty. So the thing that they all agree on is that somebody went to this grave site, and maybe the stone was already rolled away and maybe it wasn't. And Jesus' body, which had been in there a day and a half before, was no longer there. Mm-hmm. I've seen better magic tricks on crap shows. Now,
yeah.
If this is something that we can't investigate, can we then say Jesus didn't exist, Jesus didn't rise from the dead? No, we can't say that. But they have a burden of proof to me. And here's the stunner. You ready?
Yeah.
Isn't Jesus' resurrection the single most important fact about Christianity?
Yeah.
Isn't God supposed to be way, way smarter than all of us?
Yeah.
If God wants us to accept the most important fact, the resurrection, why the hell hasn't he provided any evidence Where is the documentation? Why isn't God presenting himself to us and saying, yes, it's true, I said so? Why is it that we have to go back to an ancient book where there's no Bible, New Testament 2.0, no clarification, and we look at the accounts and they don't agree? Why is their God silent about the single most important facet of their religion?
I don't have an answer for that.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's a very good. Can I just interject, because this is something that Tracy gave me a good answer with this too, but it's just something I've been. I don't want to say like tortured with, but just like something that has been gnawing on me, because I go through these arguments again and again, and I'll find I don't want to say that I'm gullible, but I'm kind of gullible, and I'll find like the slightest argument in either direction and immediately do a 180, at least on a superficial level, and I'm so terrified.
You don't have to be worried about that, Teddy. So here's the thing: there's lots of people who would
consuming my life.
There's a lot of people who would be viewed as gullible by outsiders and perhaps by themselves. As long as you recognize that you have a tendency to not do a detailed critical examination of something, to not be sufficiently skeptical. As soon as you realize that, then it should be pretty easy to train yourself to say, you know what, maybe I'm wrong. I don't have enough information to conclude this. I'm going to stop being terrified and stop accepting things until I have really, really good reasons, and not just when some apologist says something that I don't personally know how to refute. Because that's one of the dirty little secrets about apologists. Most believers sit in the pews, have no idea what their Bible says, they have no idea about the history of their religion, they don't know how to think skeptically, they don't have the tools to investigate, which is why when Josh McDowell writes Evidence That Demands a Verdict and hands it to everybody in the churches, they're like, yeah, look, this smart dude just vindicated everything I believed and now I don't have to do any work. Nobody knows this stuff. So don't beat yourself up for not being able to rebut something. You were curious, you called someone who may know, and I may be wrong, or I may not know. But when it comes to the fear of hell thing, for me it was really simple. Why am I afraid of this particular hell more than another? Well, it's because it's the one that I was raised with, and it's the one that is most popular in the country I live in. If you had been raised in a Muslim country, you would probably have a fear of a Muslim afterlife.
Well, so I'll say something, like, I don't come really religious family at all. Like, they're super atheistic, agnostic.
You live in Gainesville, Florida. You're surrounded by religion, Christianity in particular, all the time.
I'm just going to college here. I grew up in like Jewish South Florida, so but like atheist Jews kind of. But
you shouldn't have moved.
You know, it's because.
Yeah, you're slumming it, man, but.
Anyway, go ahead and continue. And I want to let Don jump in on this too, because I don't want to talk the whole time.
I'm sorry, but yeah, but just, and I do notice that. So I'm actually like right now kind of going through a Christian like kind of phase with it, but I've noticed that like during this whole like crazy thing, like I'll feel like really scared of Christianity, and then I'll like go like read the depictions of like the Muslim hell, which is a lot more clear, and then I'll kind of like switch over to being more afraid of that one for a while, and I'll get dragged into like the Muslim apologetics with like, you know, the infallibility of the Quran or whatever, and that'll last a week or two, and then I'll hear like some argument for Christianity, and it bounces back and back, and it's like I've never really dealt with this in my life, and it's just like I'm aware that it's an emotional thing, but it's just like consuming me, like just like bat that's like living in my throat. I can't.
You have to recognize that somebody could come up to you every single day with a new threat that you can't prove, and then you'll be scared of that threat. You have to start to realize that the time to believe something is after the evidence is presented, and the time to be afraid of something is when there's good reason to think that it's real and a threat. Because while you're sitting around terrified of some threatening afterlife, what facets of your actual life are being negatively impacted by you worrying about what might happen in somebody's afterlife?
Well, I mean a lot, but again, I mean, in the argument like that, that crazy bit of my brain is like, if hell isn't real, this is like the most irrational theory you could have, and if it is the most rational theory you could have. because it's like literally the worst thing that you could conceive of.
So I hate to tell you, but that's a really lengthy tautology, which says if hell is real, then there's good reason to be afraid of it.
I know, and I know it's not a logical thing, and I know it's just an emotional. I don't like appealing to Pascal's wager because I see how stupid it is, but I keep, at least in an emotional level, keep coming back to it, and it's like knocking on my head like this crazy thing.
Let me take a crack here. I've argued that the three pillars of apologetics are lies, logical fallacies, and emotional manipulation. And when I argue with theists and debate, if they use any of these things, I point out that they've lost, because their best arguments are these things that are unacceptable. They don't lead to any notion of truth. And if you are using these arguments or using these tactics, then you are sort of admitting that you don't have anything better. And so you are being emotionally manipulated, and if they don't have intellectual arguments that get you to the truth, or reasons to believe in the claims that they're making, then you should ignore them, because they're using slimy, manipulative tactics in order to get you to believe something. And we talked about what's the harm of religion. Well, here's a prime example of, boy, this religion sure is harmful, because it's torturing this person for no reason, and there's no good reason to believe in this religion.
And I tell you this, Teddy, there's another caller waiting, and they have a question about the afterlife. Are you listening to the show, or are only on the phone listening?
I have it on my phone, but does it like last on the phone?
Oh, you're only listening?
I can pull it up.
I tell you what, let me just put you on hold and take this other caller, because his question may have something about the afterlife that might help you. So
okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I'm just going to put you back on hold for a minute.
Thanks, Teddy.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There. Hey, Abe, thanks for waiting. You are the last caller. You're in New Jersey, and you're on with Matt and Don.
Hey, guys. How was everything?
A mess.
Well, I don't know. I just saw you're destroying her over there. That's funny.
Yeah, I'll try not to be racist.
What have you got for us today?
Well, so I have so let me first say that I'm a Muslim, and I have to say that I've been listening to your guys' show recently for quite some time, and it's very interesting, and I think that you bring a lot of good points, and I've been considering your viewpoints for quite some time.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah. So basically, what I want to present, I want to present this argument that a lot of Muslims in life they present this kind of argument, and it's just there's just something particularly strange about it. Like it's just like it's strangely convincing, but I don't know if it should be convincing.
Okay, well, that's good, because it sounds like your bullshit detector is going off. So let's hear it. Let's tear it apart.
Okay. Yeah. So basically the first part of this is that in the Quran.
Does your
So I can hear somebody in my damn backyard. Let me go get that thing on the ass. Better not be no little kid. Get off my lawn! I'm about to get out of here anyway, guys. I gotta cook dinner. It's gonna take me a minute to cook this stuff too, so. That's a really wide area of skin tone there. It's gonna take me a minute to run through that little section. Better not be in my yard. Matter of fact, I'm gonna set these brushes in there for a second. Let me run to the bathroom before I get out of here.
Have a serious medical condition, such as cerebral palsy.
It isn't. David in Queensland, how are you?
Oh, hi, really well, thanks, man. Hey, how's yourself?
I'm not too bad.
Say hi to Don as well, thanks.
Well, hi. You can say hi to him. You're on with both of us.
You guys a few times before. Actually, first time I called, it was you and John.
Cool.
I was going over some scientific literature, and I've noticed the word unnatural is in scientific literature here and there. And then I looked up in a thesaurus that unnatural and supernatural are directly synonymous with each other.
Wow.
Does that mean that
no
scientists? No. Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree.
They use the word unnatural pretty regularly, and typically they're describing things that are unexplainable by natural, laws and stuff like that. So I was just wondering if that was in some way.
So here's the thing: there are plenty of scientists who believe in the supernatural, but they don't believe it on the basis of science. Science has nothing to say about the supernatural. And I can't speak to all of these because there may be people out there who are scientists and educated in science who are trying to argue on behalf of the supernatural by using science in some fashion, but you can't get there. And by and large, unnatural just means unusual, out of the ordinary, abnormal. Here, let me get the thesaurus here. Extraordinary, strange, odd, peculiar, unorthodox, exceptional, irregular, atypical, untypical. I don't even see supernatural on the quick synonyms there. So
it would depend a lot on context.
It would certainly be listed in a thesaurus as one of many potential synonyms, but that's because words have different uses. And so you have to figure out what word they're using and why. But at the end of the day, like Francis Collins is the former head of the Human Genome Project, and he's a good scientist. He believes in God, in Jesus, and the Trinity, because he came across a waterfall frozen in 3. But he doesn't say that science confirms God. As a matter of fact, that he's on record as saying that the genetic evidence alone is enough to confirm common ancestry. So any model, any religious model that denies common ancestry, he would reject. But when you find words like unnatural, there's a couple of different things. One is, what do they actually mean by it? And you can't just go to a thesaurus and pick it out. Otherwise, I could just as easily go to thesaurus and say, no, what they mean is strange. So scientists are then talking about strange stuff. So you have to dig in to find out what it is that was meant there. And then you have to dig in to find out, is this actually science? Or is this just science? There's plenty of papers that get published that should never be published. Peer review is not perfect. But at the end of the day, what science does is it comes up with the most...
All right, guys. Like I said, this was a after work stream. I even tried to make it to a meeting, but couldn't find the location, so that wasted like 40 minutes of my time where I could have been in here. But either way, that last painting I did is done. Getting back to some of my own projects, and within the next couple of days I really need to get some more canvases started. I have a few pictures I think I might play around with, but as for right now, this is the only piece that I have that I'm working on. Y'all know I normally have like 3 to 4 paintings going on. I got to get back on the ball. I've been doing so many shows and so much other stuff, like so many events. Like, man, I hardly be home. Pulling in so many different directions. I'm making excuses now. I hope nobody realized that. I just realized it myself. But we'll see what Old Trap House can come up with next. Some old fire. Appreciate y'all, man. Peace. Till next time.